because it is 7 o'clock and this is the last of the Blinky Lights Y'all project. We've got our board done. We've got our board modeled here. And the next step we have to do here is just to finish up our enclosure and make it look nice. So my hope was, so there was an announcement, and I'm curious, Mike, if you've got this available, but it has not been turned on for me, is I saw a really cool new addition to Fusion 360 in the plastic workspace. This is kind of a new workspace here. So, normally we hang out in the solid workspace, and we've done some stuff in Surface and in sheet metal, but there's a plastic workspace here. And I saw the January update, it seemed like they added a Snap Fit tool, which seemed super cool. And I wanted to use it, but it hasn't been turned on for me, or it's not for hobbyist users. One of those things is true. I just don't know which one. Do you have a Snap Fit option in your Create menu in the plastic workspace?
I'm jumping there right now. Let's see, plastic, create.
Yeah, so I don't have the Snap Fit tool. Um,
No, I do not.
yeah, must be for paid users only then,
Could
um,
be.
which is which is unfortunate, but is what it is. All right, so we'll have to create our Snap Fit the old-fashioned way using sketches. So we've got our box here, our enclosure, our LED strip control project, and I can spin down the enclosure component that has our bodies for our enclosure in it. And let me go ahead and make that my active component now. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this little radio button next to the enclosure component and make that my active component. That way all the sketching and body creation that I do will happen inside of this enclosure component. And I'm going to spin down my sketches folder, and I'll spin down my bodies folder too, because we can refresh ourselves here. So we got the top of our box, and we've got the bottom of our box down here. And we want to create a snap fit to connect the two of them together. So I'm going to turn off the top of my box here and just kind of examine it. So I've got ample room all the way around on all four sides. However, I've got a USB cord that is going to need to come out of this side because my board here has a USB port on it. And you remember we have a USB hole opening for a USB plug in the side of our box here. So it probably makes the most sense for me to put my snap fits on the two sides that aren't going to have an opening on them. So this side and this side don't have an opening out the side, just because I like to put my snap fit somewhere in the middle, and this USB opening will get in the way there if we do that. So I'm going to choose to put my snap fits on the side there. And my preferred method for doing this is because I kind of want to see inside of my box while I'm drawing this snap fit. So I think this is a great opportunity to use from the inspect menu the section analysis tool. So if we click on inspect and then come down to section analysis, what this will let us do is select a face. So I'm going to pick one of the faces that's adjacent to that. So here, let me spin around to this side here. So if I pick the face that has my USB port on it, and then I move this little arrow inwards, then I get to um, how big is this box? I don't remember how big my box is. 2.337. So if I just take this section analysis tool and I move it from, come on now, this face right here, if I move it inwards, like right about to there, I just want to see inside the box. I guess it doesn't really matter where this is, because we'll make a plane in order to make our sketch on. That's exactly where we want it to be. But for right now, I just want to be able to see inside of the interior space of our enclosure here. And I'm going to say, okay. Now, I'm going to rotate around so I'm looking in the inside of this enclosure. And I am going to tell you what, let's turn that off. Because now that we can see inside of that enclosure when we need to, I'm just going to go ahead and turn off this section analysis uh, tool, or sorry, folder, by just clicking on the little eyeball next to the section that we've got here. Because now I want to create the plane that we're going to draw on. So I'm going to create a plane that is right in the middle, right in between this surface and this surface over here. And in order to do that, I'm going to use from the construct menu the mid plane option. So if I choose construct and then mid plane, it's the fourth option from the top. And now I'm going to click on the two planes that are opposite each other that I want to make my mid plane from. So my Fusion is kind of being annoying right now. It doesn't want to highlight the side with my USB port on it, but I'm pretty sure if I click somewhere, it'll let me click on it after I click here. And now I can select the opposite side of that. So I'm making this mid plane right in the middle between the side that has my USB port on it and the opposite side of that, and then it'll create a nice midplane right in the middle of that box for myself to create a sketch on. So I'm going to say OK here. And now on that plane, we can name it if we want to. So I've got a construction folder here, and that plane, this is my mid plane. Now on that plane, I'm going to create a sketch. So I'll go ahead and click on Create, and then Create Sketch. And I'll choose that midplane as the plane that I'm going to create my sketch on. And now that I'm spinning around to look down the look inside of this box, now I'm going to turn that section analysis back on. So up here in my analysis folder, I can turn back on that eyeball, that visibility on that section analysis. And now it's kind of easier for me to see where I'm creating this snap fit here. So I am going to go ahead and I'm going to need to shrink this down a little bit, aren't I? So from my create menu, I'm going to start out by projecting where the inside of my box is currently. So I'm going to go ahead and from create, come down to project include, and then over to project. It's also the P key on the keyboard. And if I look slightly askew so I can see the inside wall of my box, either the inside, either side of the inside of my box, when I hover over that face, it gives me a little red line here. So that's drawing a line that's projecting that face into a line. And that's what I want to do, because I want to have the line for the inside of both sides of my box. So I'm going to click on the one side, and then I'm going to kind of zoom out. and zoom back in here and click on the inside face of the other side of my box. And in addition to the inside of my box having that geometry represented, I also want to have the outside of my box. And I just need the two faces that are kind of the side of the box, or what are going to be the faces that we create our snap fit on. And tell you what, I've created that, but let me go ahead and turn off my bodies, and I'll turn off my PCB board and parts. And we don't need that sketch right now, just so it's easy to see. So these three purple lines that I have, that's the internal, that's the geometry that we're projecting over. And that kind of relates to the sides of our box, both inside and outside of the side of our box. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Cool. All right, so I'm going to say okay. And now we can make some geometry here. So I'm going to grab my rectangle tool. So create rectangle and then 2-point rectangle. And I'm going to place the first part of my rectangle down in the bottom inside corner. So if I hover down here, come on down here, mouse pad. There we go. I'm just going to go ahead and click and place. Oh, there we go. Now it's going to let me do it. So I'll place the first corner in the bottom corner of the box, and then I'll come inwards. What's the total amount of my box? 1.25. I probably want to come in half of that. So half of the total amount of our box. I can do the math right here. I can do 1.25 divided by 2, and that'll give me half of that. And then for a height, let's go with just 1/8 of an inch. I think 1/8 of an inch will be fine. Maybe we want to do, yeah, 1/8 of an inch will be probably enough to bend. We want to have it flexible, so it needs to be able to move as we place the box on top of it. Let's go with 1/4 of an inch, just to be on the safe side. So we got, it's 0.0625 by 1/4 of an inch. And then I'm going to go ahead and say enter. And now I also want to create the little, it's going to be a little point here, I guess we can kind of say. So it's I'm going to grab my line tool, and I just need to make a triangle at the top of my box that goes almost to the outside of the box. So I don't need to go all the way to the outside of the box, but it goes almost to the outside of the box. And I'm going to come down. I guess this angle doesn't really make a whole lot of difference. It should be greater than 45 degrees probably. And I'm coming down 0.062 inches, but anywhere probably less than 0.01. So I'm coming down like 0.075, 0.075, not 0.75. And again, we wanted to make it almost to the outside of our box, but not quite. And then from there, I'm going to go straight down just a very small amount. So 0.025, let's say. And from that point where I came straight down, now I'm just going to go straight over until I meet the side of my rectangle. Now I realize this is difficult to see because my lines are blue, so I'm going to turn off my box body here. And you can kind of more carefully or more distinctly, let's say, see those blue lines that I made. So this is just our little snap fit feature here. Now, it's going to fit inside of an opening that we create. And let's go ahead and make that opening right now. So I'm going to grab my rectangle tool again, and I'm just going to draw a rectangle from the top upper corner of that very first rectangle we made. And I'm going to draw it down to just below where the bottom of our little snap fit feature is. And if I zoom in here, just give it a little bit of breathing room, and it'll come all the way to the outside of our box, of our enclosure. And then I just need to do one more thing on this sketch, and that's to create a little bit of breathing room here for our snap fit, like this. And this is going to be what we make into our snap fit. We just need a little bit of breathing room between this and what will be the inside wall of our box. And in order to do that, I'm just going to go ahead and grab my offset tool from the modify menu. So I'll click on modify and then offset. And I'm just going to offset this line right here, or I guess it wants to offset that rectangle. I suppose the other way that I could do this is I could just draw a line. So I can draw a line that goes, and I could purposefully make it in the wrong place. So I can draw a line that comes straight down. Actually, it probably needs to be a rectangle, don't I? Because I need an enclosed shape. So I'm actually going to make one more rectangle here. I'm going to make a rectangle that goes from the bottom of the outside of my snap fit all the way up here, and it'll go all the way to the top of my snap fit. And the width of this rectangle is going to be 0.0. Oh, that's the height. Let's try that again. 0.025. Oh, that's way too big. Why did that seem so big? It's because I'm zoomed in so much. That's probably not exorbitant. 25 thousandths seems like a good clearance, right, Mike?
Yep.
So 0.025 is going to be the width of that box, and it'll go up all the way as high as we made our snap fit, so a quarter of an inch, I guess. And this is going to be our snap fit feature here. So now that we've got all that drawn, I'm going to go ahead and say finish sketch. Now I've got all my sketches turned off here. I'm going to turn those back on. And I've got the top of my box turned off. I'm going to leave that off. In fact, I advise you to turn the top of your box off as well. And I've got some extruding to do here now. So I'm going to go ahead and from the create menu, I'm going to go ahead and choose extrude. And I'm going to extrude a couple of features here. So I'm going to extrude this tall rectangle here, and then the, I guess, little clip, let's call it. This is like the clip feature here. So this is our snap fit. I'm going to extrude it out, not in a direction of one side, but because this sketch exists in the middle of our box, in the middle of our enclosure, I'm going to extrude this a direction that is symmetric. So in our direction option in the extrude window, I'm just going to go ahead and choose the symmetric option. And now I can specify a distance here. So if I want it to be a total of a half of an inch, I should make this 0.25 inches. So if it's 0.25 inches, then it's 0.25 inches in each direction. So it's a total of a half of an inch. And that seems like a good size for a snap fit, I think. At least for this size box that we have, which is pretty small. I'm choosing join as my operation here. And I can do that because I've only got my the bottom of my box visible. So it's only going to join that to the visible bodies, and the only body that I have that's visible is the bottom of my box. So join is good, and I'm going to say okay. All right, so now I need to create that shape on the opposite side of my box. But instead of recreating all that sketching, we can mirror that extrude that we just did. So before we mirror that extrusion over to the other side, we need a plane to mirror it across. And we've done this before here in this class. We can use that mid-plane option. So from the construct menu, I'm going to go ahead and choose the mid-plane option. And now I can pick the plane that represents the outside of my box on the side we just made our snap fit feature on. And I can rotate over and look at the side that's opposite of that. And now I get oh boy. Now I get another mid plane here that appears. And I'm just going to go ahead and make that a little bit bigger, just so it's easy to click on. And I'm going to name this my mirror plane, or my snap fit mirror. So I know that this is the plane that I'm mirroring my snap across. So now that we've got that plane made, from the create menu, I can find the mirror option. So we'll go ahead and click on create and then mirror. Now the mirror type that we're going to choose is not a face or a body, but the mirror type is going to be a feature. So I'm going to choose this features option from the type drop-down menu there. And now to select the feature, I'm going to do that in my timeline at the bottom. So down here, I've got my kind of timeline of events that have been taking place as I use various tools here. And if I choose that, find the last extrusion that I did, you can see it kind of highlights as I hover over things down here on my drawing view. And if I choose that extrude option, it'll highlight that last extrusion that we did in blue. And then I can select the plane that I'm mirroring that across. And I get a little ghosted out image over there showing me where it's going to put it. And I can say, okay. So now we've got the inside snap drawn. Now we want to draw what it's snapping into, or now we want to model what it's snapping into. We've already got it sketched out over here. So I'm going to turn off my bottom body, and I'm going to turn on the top of my box. So now that I've got the top of my box visible here, and actually probably won't let me pick the sketches that I need. So let's try this first. So if I say create and then extrude, yeah, so that's what I thought. So it's not going to let me choose any of my sketch objects that I want to extrude, or sketch profiles, excuse me, because those sketch profiles exist on the other side of this face here. So in order to actually pick the items that I'm going to extrude, I'm actually going to need to turn off my box body. And now we kind of have to imagine the things that we're going to want to remove from this body is going to be all of these shapes here. So we're going to remove this top section because this is what our snap is fitting into. It's going to snap into a hole in the box basically. And then we've got like our clearance gap here. So this is kind of like the clearance between the side walls of our snap and the inside wall of our box, of our enclosure, excuse me. So now that I've got those objects selected, now I can turn on the top of my box. And again, instead of extruding in one side, I'm going to extrude symmetrically. Now we extruded symmetrically 1/4 of an inch. I want this to be a little bit bigger than 1/4 of an inch because I want to have, again, some tolerance there. So 0.2, let's go with 0.26. So that'll give me 0.01 of tolerance on each side. Maybe we should do 0.27. That'll give us 20 thousandths on each side. I suppose you could do 275 and then you get that 25 thousandths, the same clearance we've got in the front, we've got on the sides. And I'm choosing as an operation cut here. And that is because we want to cut away from the top of our box, that feature that'll allow our snap fit to fit in there. Oh, and you know what? I think it looks like I missed some features here too, because in addition to this part that we're cutting away, let's go ahead and say 0 there. We're also going to cut away this area where our snap exists. So our snap exists in this area right here, so we're going to cut that away as well. So if I turn that on now and do 0.275, there we go, that looked better. And we're cutting that from our box. And I'm going to say OK. And now, I'm going to name this sketch. This is our snap fit. What is this sketch here? I missed naming a sketch. This is our USB port. All right, so I can turn off my snap fit sketch. And let's mirror this snap fit geometry that it's going to snap into over onto the other side. And we've already got our plane in place to do that. So we'll use that same trick we did the first time. So from the Create menu, I'm going to go ahead and choose the mirror option. We're making a mirror type of features. The objects that we're going to mirror, the object in this case is that very last extrusion that we just did. And when I highlight that in my timeline, I can see it reflected in my drawing view, the geometry that is picking out for that extrusion. And then the mirror plane is going to be that snap mirror, is what I called my snap mirror, that plane that divided our box in the middle between our two snaps. And I'll say OK. So now if I turn back on the bottom of my box and I turn off the section analysis tool there, now we can see that we've got a nice snap that'll be accessible from the outside here, so we can snap it in place. And then when we want to unsnap it, we just kind of have to reach in and push that with a fingernail or use a tool of some sort to unsnap it. and we've got a snap fit. Now the snap fit tool that I saw that was pretty cool did all that for you. Basically, you just like specify a point, and it just like makes a snap fit for you. It was pretty sweet. The video that I saw, but again, must be for paid users only. So if you're a paid user, um, then you don't have to do all that drawing, but you miss out on doing all that fun drawing. I feel bad for all those paid users. All right, so I'm going to turn back on my PCB board because I turned that off, and I'll close down my sketch folder and my construction folder just so it's not cluttering up my view here. The last thing that we wanted to do before we finish up this project was just to make the outside of the box look a little bit nicer.
Just lost volume.
Oh, did you? Can you hear me now? Can
Kind
you hear me
of.
now? Maybe
Let me put in headphones, see if I can hear you.
maybe I turned down my microphone somehow. I think so. I think I'm still got these
You were
new.
talking fine, then you just dropped out.
Huh. I wonder if I touched my headphone in a way that it thought I was doing something. It's a weird thing about wireless headphones is they've got buttons on them apparently. So if I touch this thing somehow, I must think I'm doing something.
I can kind of hear you now, so it's okay.
All right, good, good. So the last thing we wanted to do here with our box is to just make it look a little less utilitarian. So this is the thing for power and blinky lights. So maybe it doesn't need to look so boring and bland. And I think a great option for adding some character to the outside of an object is using the Emboss tool. So the Emboss tool is nice because it'll work on a curved surface if you've got a curved surface. Here we don't, but it'll work nonetheless in our case here. So I'm going to start by creating an offset plane. So I'm going to draw my design on the top of my box on a plane that is going to offset from the top of this box. So from the construct menu, I'm going to go ahead and choose this offset plane option. I'm going to specify as a plane to offset from the top of my enclosure here. I'm just going to move it up like a half of an inch. It doesn't need to be any specific distance, but just to give it some distance from our box itself. And I'm going to say OK. And now I've got a plane to move. So this is my design. So now I can draw a sketch on that plane. So in the create menu, I'll go ahead and choose create sketch. I'll choose the plane that I just made there as a sketch on the plane, including the sketch on. And now we've got some freedom from some free play here. So I think let me just go ahead and do an experiment here. But I'm pretty sure when you're doing an emboss, when you're using the emboss tool, your sketch profile can go beyond certain. So it can go beyond the sides of the box, and it still works just fine. So I'm gonna go back to that sketch that I just made. Okay, so here's the sketch that we're working with, and we can draw whatever design or pattern we want on the front of this. So I'm gonna go with maybe some diagonal lines. So I'm going to grab my rectangle, my line tool. So let's go with the 3-point rectangles. So I'd like to have some diagonal raised and lowered areas. So if I choose this 3-point rectangle option, and I just draw a rectangle that is at some angle, like 45-ish. So the way you use this 3-point rectangle tool, if you've never used it before, is you click to place one corner of your rectangle, and then if I move my mouse out, now I'm kind of specifying the angle of this line, of this rectangle. So if I click to place the second point of this rectangle, and then move my mouse away, now I could specify a width for this line. And I'm going to make it anything else is fine for me. I'm going to say OK. And I was purposefully making this rectangle much longer than, or much wider and longer than what a box is. It extends out past the outer boundaries of my rectangle. Because now I can make a pattern of that rectangle. So if I choose from the Create menu, come down here to Rectangular Pattern, and I can specify all of those lines. So I'm just going to kind of box select everything. You could just come in here and click on each part of this line to make a selection of it. But I can also just grab my box select tool and just click and drag and highlight all of that stuff. Now I can specify a direction here if I wanted to, but I think I'm just going to leave it directionless. So if I wanted to, I could specify a direction that would say, instead of forcing it to constrain to the X and Y coordinate system, I could constrain it to the angles of the box. So if I click this select option, oh, that's interesting. It won't let you specify a direction using a line that is part of the thing you're making a pattern of. So if I did want to make a specified direction, I would need a different line, because it won't let me choose a line that I've already am making a pattern of. If that makes sense, we'd had to have a secondary line that was a direction line. But for me, this is fine, because I just, like I said, I'm just trying to make a little bit of surface pattern here. I'm going to choose to make this symmetric as well, because I want to go a couple of lines on either side of that. And just some diagonal pattern is good, I think. And I'm making 5 of them, and I'm going to say OK. And I think that's going to be enough for me. I think less is more in this case. Now, I suppose the other thing we could do here is we could add text uh, for, like, say, what this port is, right? So from the Create menu, I could come down here to my text tool, and I can zoom in and I could label this box. So if I click and drag to place a little text box there, and now I've got some sample text that is way too big, so I can scale that down quite a bit. You got to kind of be careful when you're scaling down text, because at a certain size, your printer is not going to print it. So at a certain size, if you're printing this box on a standard FDM printer, um, your printer is only so big, or your nozzle is only so small, I guess I should say. You can only represent so much geometry with a large nozzle, even if it's 0.04 inches, or is it 0.04 millimeters? It's still pretty large when you get to the tiny text like this. So this may or may not print, but we could
say WS 2812, and that's the kind of LEDs that we're plugging in here. Have that nice little label hanging out there, or you can name your box. You can say LED strip control, or whatever you want to do. And then I'm going to say finish sketch here. And now we can use that Emboss Tool, like I just mentioned. So if I click on Create and then choose Emboss, I can choose each one of my 5 stripes. I think I'm actually going to emboss my text separately. So I want to have those stripes be a raised emboss. And then I'll select the face that I'm embossing onto. And 0.079 is way too much. I'm going to do 25 thousandths, so 0.025. And then I'll say OK. And I'm going to do that same operation to my text here. So I'm going to say create, and then emboss. I'll select the text, and then I'll select the face that I'm embossing that from. And instead of raising the text, I'm going to choose to deboss. So instead of embossing up, I'm going to deboss downwards. And just a very small amount, that 25 thousandths is fine again. And I can label that, name that sketch here. This is my emboss. Turn that off, and there we go. Maybe the last thing I'll do here is I'll add some color to this project. So I'm going to highlight the little radio button next to my LED strip control and main document component, just so I can see everything being fully opaque and visible. And I'll just go ahead and add a little bit of color to this box, just because we haven't done that in a while. So from the modify menu, I'll come down to the appearance option here. And now I can come down and find the plastic folder and the opaque folder within inside of that plastic folder. And I'm just going to find a nice plastic glossy gray, and I'll make the bottom of it a plastic glossy gray, and maybe I'll make the top of it a black. So the top will be black, and the bottom will be gray. That highlights our snap fit a little bit better. And I'll say OK there, and there we go. Now we got us a box here. Mike, do you have any questions? Did you follow along okay?
Oops, sorry, turned the microphone off. That looks pretty good. Little
Cool,
too
good.
fancy at the end, but I really like that snap fit. That's cool. That's a
Yeah,
trick to remember.
Yeah, it's a good little thing to keep in the back pocket. You know, Adafruit has a great snap fit tutorial on their YouTube channel too. They do snap fit enclosures. They do Fusion 360 stuff I think, I don't know if it's weekly, but it's probably monthly. But they've got a great snap fit tutorial, and I kind of modeled my snap fit on their snap fit. So if you're interested in more snap fit stuff, I would thoroughly encourage checking out Adafruit's YouTube channel. So
Very
that wraps
good.
up
Thank you,
this.
sir.
yeah, that wraps up This Is a Project, and next week we'll move on to being back in person at the Milwaukee Makerspace, which is great, and we'll be starting a brand new project. So we'll see you next week.
Okay, very good.